When I stood in front of the stall and watched hundreds of people queuing up just to buy a piece of crystal cake or chicken tofu pudding, I realized, perhaps with this spatula and fire, I am not only a father, but also a food magician that people can't stop eating. But at this moment, my ex-wife Xiao Feifei approached with a sneer, stared at my stall, and said, "Su Yang, you are really hiding well? Were you pretending before?" Part 3. Before going out, I had prepared breakfast for Nono: 2 braised pork buns, a glass of fresh milk, and boiled eggs. Seeing her eating so happily, I couldn't help but smile. After she finished eating, I handed her the lunch I prepared, which included stir-fried beef noodles, twice-cooked pork, and a cup of green bean shaved ice. "But, Dad, I promised Teacher Dakian that I would bring her food." Nuonuo showed a pleading look. "She is so young. If I break my promise, how could she survive in kindergarten in the future?" I touched her head and took out another portion of fried beef noodles and put it in her backpack. "I've prepared it for you," I said with a smile, "but you have to be good in kindergarten, okay? If someone bullies you—" I paused and said, "Don't bully other children." After hearing this, Nuonuo agreed with a smile. "I know, Dad. I'm the best and most obedient." I could only smile helplessly. Of course she is the best behaved in front of me, but it is not necessarily the case when no one is watching her. I sent her to the kindergarten, waved goodbye, and rode away on my electric tricycle. As soon as she entered the kindergarten, Nuonuo was surrounded by a group of children, each holding their own toys and candies, vying to exchange lunch with her. "Suinua, your father's lunch is so delicious. Can you give me some?" a child asked. Another took out a remote control car. "Nunuo, I brought a remote control car. Do you want to play?" Yaya was a little dissatisfied. She obviously felt that everyone shouldn't be so enthusiastic about Nuonuo's lunch. "Nunuo, my mother made fried beef noodles and braised pork buns. Can we eat them in turn?" She wanted to express that her mother's cooking was no worse than mine. Nuonuo ignored her and responded coldly, "How can your mother's cooking skills be better than my father's?" Her words made Yaya blush with anger, but she didn't say anything else. I rode an electric tricycle to the gate of Huaqiao Primary School. Strangely, there were more adults than children here today, and everyone lined up in a long queue, with nothing at the front. "Boss Sue's breakfast is here," someone shouted excitedly. "The braised pork buns are only sold in the morning, and they are super delicious." Everyone was looking forward to the braised pork buns and fried beef noodles I was selling, and some customers even helped set up the stall. The whole process was smooth and fast. As the aroma of fried beef noodles spread, everyone in the queue couldn't help but drool. Even the parents of students who had been skeptical joined the queue after smelling the aroma. After wave of customers left, my stall welcomed the second wave of peak, retired uncles and aunts. Compared with office workers and students, their pace of life is much slower, and they always have smiles on their faces. It is obvious that the pensions in Shanghai are not low and their lives are leisurely. In addition to traveling or eating together, they are also used to eating breakfast at my stall after exercising in the morning. Even greasy food like fried beef noodles can make them feel delicious. "Boss Sue, are there no crystal cakes today?" an old lady asked disappointedly. I told her that there were no crystal cakes today, and the old lady got anxious. "Then when will you sell them?" "My whole family loves to eat your crystal cakes." I smiled and said I would sell them in the afternoon and evening, and told her that she could get information about the stall through the WeChat group. She immediately joined the group and joked that when I sell crystal cakes, she would bring the senior army with her. As we were chatting and laughing, the old lady suddenly noticed a few special names in the group. Boss Sue's new girlfriend, Boss Sue's only wife, Boss Sue's legal wife. She lowered her voice and asked me, "Why do you have so many wives?" I almost laughed out loud and hurriedly explained, "They are not my wives. They are just named for fun." She breathed a sigh of relief and laughed too. The old lady then started urging you to get married. "It's not easy for you to live alone, right? I'll introduce you to some girls." I felt helpless and didn't want to think about this anymore. After all, with my past experiences, I am now very cautious about finding a partner. The most important thing is that the woman must be able to accept Nuonuo and love her like her own daughter. As waves of customers left, 2 hours passed, and all the items on my stall were sold out. The other vendors were getting anxious. My stall has never been deserted, and customers have been coming in continuously. Everyone praises the food I cook, and almost every customer is queuing up. When I finally closed my stall, the breakfast rush had passed, and the vendors around me began to plan to avoid me, fearing that they would lose business to my crowds. When I rode my electric tricycle back home, Uncle Zhang, and an old man who looked very distinguished were waiting for me in the yard. This is Lao Zhou, whom I would like to introduce to you. He's a state banquet-level chef. Uncle Zhang introduced with a smile. I looked at Lao Zhou, feeling somewhat puzzled. How could such an old man with extraordinary temperament think that a young man like me could cook food that amazed him? Lao Zhou's eyes were full of criticism, and he was obviously not convinced by me. Give me 2 servings of fried beef noodles and 2 cups of green bean smoothie, Uncle Zhang said to me with a smile, and introduced a friend named Lao Zhou. I nodded. Although I had closed the stall, considering that it was a neighbor who brought his friends, I certainly would not refuse. I started to operate the wok skillfully, frying the beef noodles in the wok with precise and smooth movements. Seeing how skillful I was, Lao Zhou's eyes immediately became serious. The original contempt was gone, replaced by an obvious praise. Even he began to doubt himself. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, I'm afraid no one would believe that I was a young man of only 20. What made Lao Zhou even more satisfied was that although my stall had just closed, it was still clean and tidy, and you could even see traces of wiping on the bottom of the pot. He nodded secretly and couldn't help but feel that a real chef should first cherish his working environment. Keeping it clean not only reassures customers, but also shows respect for food. As I stir-fried the beef noodles, Lao Zhou nervously observed every detail. This action of flipping the wok, seemingly simple, actually contains exquisite wrist strength. Lao Zhou knows that this skill can save effort and ensure the perfect taste of beef noodles. The heat and the strength of flipping directly determine the final flavor of beef noodles. And my operation at this time made Lao Zhou couldn't help but give a perfect evaluation. This kid has good skills. Uncle Zhang smiled proudly. You're old now, and your words have become soft. I smiled and noticed that Lao Zhou's eyes were full of admiration. It seemed that he no longer doubted me. Finally, I served the fried beef noodles, which exuded an enticing aroma. Lao Zhou took a bite and showed a surprised expression on his face. It's even better than I thought. He didn't expect that a simple fried beef noodles could be so delicious. He has been a chef for many years, and although he does not often cook this dish, he has never eaten such excellent fried beef noodles, especially since the ingredients are very simple, but it can be cooked so perfectly. Delicious! Old Zhou couldn't help but praise again. He couldn't help but ask Uncle Zhang in a low voice, did this kid accept an apprentice? Uncle Zhang smiled slightly and shook his head. You guessed wrong. Old Zhou found it hard to believe that Su Yang was so young, yet he had such superb cooking skills that even he himself couldn't do it. You can also try the mung bean smoothie I made. I took out 2 cups of mung bean smoothie with a faint smile on my face. Mung bean smoothie? Old Zhou looked at the smoothie in my hand, took it and tasted it. He had always looked down on this kind of street drink. But today, he drank this smooth green bean shaved ice for the first time and was surprised. The shaved ice was sweet but not greasy, cool and refreshing, making people want to drink another sip. This mung bean shaved ice is delicious. Did you add tangerine peel? Lao Zhou asked again. And rock sugar, yellow rock sugar, right? I smiled and nodded. Lao Zhou's guess was correct, but I wasn't worried that he knew the ingredients. To perfectly replicate this taste, it's not just about the ingredients. The time and heat of cooking the mung beans must also be just right. Lao Zhou also realized that the unique taste of this mung bean shaved ice is not only achieved by the ingredients, but also requires careful cooking and delicate operation. Seeing that I didn't look surprised, he roughly guessed that Uncle Zhang had eaten it first, and that the reason I could achieve such a taste, in addition to the combination of ingredients, was more due to my superb skills. Grandpa Zhang smiled, and seeing the surprise on Old Zhou's face, he continued, Su Yang's crystal cake is even more amazing. Don't hide it. Old Zhou had heard of crystal cakes and had made this kind of dessert himself, but seeing how confident Grandpa Zhang was, it was obvious that the crystal cake made by Su Yang was unique. Crystal cake? Old Zhou nodded. Although he knew how to make crystal cake, seeing Uncle Zhang's expression, he knew that this crystal cake must be different. He raised his eyebrows slightly, waiting to see Su Yang's skills. I took out the crystal cakes I had prepared in advance from the incubator and placed 4 boxes neatly on the table. Uncle Zhang scanned his phone and put his 2 boxes in his arms, looking very proud. Old Zhou shook his head helplessly, smiled, and took out his phone to pay. After receiving the crystal cake, Lao Zhou opened the box and saw the exquisite cake inside. He felt a little skeptical. The crystal cake looked crystal clear, and the surface was dotted with osmanthus honey and marigold leaves, which looked exquisite. But in his eyes, this combination, although simple, seems a bit simplistic compared to the high-end crystal cakes he often makes. Despite this, Lao Zhoudu was still looking forward to trying it, because every dish Su Yang made exceeded his expectations. He picked up a piece and took a bite. He was stunned by the cool, soft, and chewy texture. This crystal cake was not sticky at all. It had a delicate and soft texture. The aroma of osmanthus honey and marigold permeated through the layers. It was sweet but not greasy and very refreshing. This crystal cake is delicious. Old Joe took a bite and was surprised. He didn't expect Su Yang's crystal cake to be so delicious, far exceeding his expectations. Although the ingredients are simple, the result is amazing. How is this crystal cake made? Old Joe couldn't help asking. Su Yang smiled, looking at Old Joe's surprised expression, feeling very confident. Xiao Su, how did you make this crystal cake? Why is it so delicious? Old Joe finally couldn't help asking. I saw a little regret on his face as soon as he said this. As a chef, seeing such delicious food, his instinct is to want to know the secrets behind the food. However, he also knows that the chef's skills and secret recipes cannot be easily taught, especially such a delicate crystal cake. Seeing this, Grandpa Zhang smiled and joked. Look at Old Joe, he's old and even confused when eating crystal cakes. Old Joe knew that Grandpa Zhang was trying to help him resolve the embarrassment, so he smiled, but in his heart he still longed to know the secret of crystal cakes. I shrugged and smiled. There is no special secret about making crystal cake. Since I got all the knowledge about making crystal cake through the cooking god system, all the skills and recipes have been automatically imprinted in my mind. However, these details can often only be mastered after years of practice and accumulation, and it is difficult for others to imitate them completely. Old man Joe looked me up and down, and he began to re-examine me. At first, he thought I was just a young rookie, and even noticed that there were no calluses or blisters on my hands, thinking that I might not have been engaged in cooking for a long time. But as time went by, my cooking skills completely changed his mind. Every dish I made amazed him, especially the fried beef noodles. At that moment, he began to admire me from the bottom of his heart. While enjoying fried beef noodles and drinking green bean shaved ice, Uncle Zhang didn't seem to notice much about Old Joe's changes. But soon after, he keenly noticed that the way Old Joe looked at me had changed. There was a hint of fondness in those eyes, which made Uncle Zhang feel nervous. He thought, oh no, could it be that Old Man Joe intends to introduce a matchmaker to Su Yang? He was secretly anxious. After all, he had already planned to introduce his granddaughter to Su Yang. However, Mr. Zhou did not continue to pay attention to Mr. Zhang's jokes. His eyes fell on the menu of my stall again. Xiao Su, do you have these two dishes? I want to try them. He licked his lips, and it was obvious that he was looking forward to my other delicacies. Sorry, we don't have twice-cooked pork and chicken tofu pudding ready today, I replied, but they will be on sale in the afternoon and evening. Hearing this, Old Man Joe immediately became excited, and his originally depressed mood disappeared in an instant, as if life was full of hope again. I took out my phone, added him on WeChat, and pulled him into my WeChat group. Uncle Zhang saw this and quickly interrupted. Xiao Su, add me too. I couldn't help but smile. Uncle Zhang, do you have WeChat? But he smiled and said, no, what's wrong? Can't you get one now? I felt a little helpless, but seeing how Mr. Zhang was determined to keep going, I had no choice but to agree to help him register for WeChat. As a result, when he heard the agreement, his face immediately broke into a smile, and in an instant he returned to his usual happy look, which was exactly the same as Nua's expression every time she pretended to be aggrieved. As for my ex-wife, Mr. Qiao, I bought you the breakfast you requested. Fang Xiaoya put the breakfast on Xiao Feifei's desk breathlessly. The sweat on her forehead showed that she was really trying hard not to be late. Seeing her tired appearance, Xiao Feifei couldn't help but remind her, I told you that you don't have to punch in. Hee, you have to look like you're at work. Fang Xiaoya explained with a smile. She was really lucky today. Not only did she buy a delicious breakfast from Su Yang, but she was also not late. She used to have breakfast at the hotel every day, but today she ran to the school gate, which was several kilometers away from the company, to buy breakfast. She was very tired. Xiao Feifei's eyes did not stay on Fang Xiaoya, but looked at the breakfast on the table. Fried beef noodles, braised pork buns, and green bean shaved ice. She raised the corner of her mouth slightly, as if she was still looking forward to something. Where's the crystal cake? Su Yang said that breakfast is no longer for sale, but the braised pork buns are also very good. Fang Xiaoya explained while looking at her bag vigilantly, afraid that Xiao Feifei would snatch her breakfast. She hurried back to her workstation, opened the box, and the aroma of fried beef noodles filled her nose. Fang Xiaoya couldn't help it and started to wolf it down immediately. It smells so good, she sighed as she ate, as if all the hard work in the morning was smoothed out by the delicious food. Then, she took a sip of the mung bean shaved ice, and the cool sweetness instantly made her fatigue disappear. She exclaimed, "Everything Su Yang makes is delicious. I really can't stop eating it." While Fang Xiaoya was eating with gusto, Xiao Feifei sat there and suddenly felt a little lost. She hadn't had breakfast for a long time. She was too busy with work and had no time, and her appetite was not big. However, Su Yang's crystal cake that day left a deep impression on her, and she still remembers it today. Unfortunately, there was no crystal cake today, so she could only open the box of fried beef noodles. The aroma of the fried beef noodles made Xiao Feifei's mouth water instantly. She couldn't wait to pick up the chopsticks and take a bite. She was immediately amazed by the delicious taste. "This is simply the best fried beef noodles I have ever eaten," she exclaimed while eating and couldn't help but continue eating. Every bite made her feel extremely happy, and she even couldn't help but recall the time when she and Su Yang ate together in college, that kind of simple yet satisfying beauty. She no longer cared about her image. Her mouth was full of oil as she ate, completely immersed in the pleasure of this delicious food. Then she took another bite of the braised pork bun. The juice from the meat filling and the full feeling of satisfaction made her feel happy. With the coolness of the mung bean smoothie, her soul seemed to be sublimated. At that moment, she forgot all her troubles and all her pressures. Burp! The sudden burp made Xiao Feifei stunned for a moment, and her originally cool and elegant image as a Su collapsed in an instant. She herself did not expect that she would burp uncontrollably because of delicious food. She smiled slightly, knowing in her heart that the culprit behind all this was Su Yang. Chapter 100. Did Xiao Winshan's precious daughter get kicked in the head by a donkey? The two people who just walked by looked familiar. I vaguely felt that I had seen them somewhere, but I couldn't remember who they were. Standing at the gate of the courtyard I rented was an old man. He was wearing clothes that could not be more ordinary, a pair of old cloth shoes on his feet, and a pair of reading glasses around his neck. He looked like an ordinary person no matter how you looked at him. But for some reason, the aura he exuded made me a little confused. I have seen this aura too many times, usually appearing in those successful people with strong aura. He greeted me and said, "Young man, can you give me another serving of fried beef noodles?" I was stunned for a moment, wondering what was going on today. I had just seen off the two old men, and here came another one who was very familiar with me. "Who are you?" I asked tentatively. "I just ate your fried beef noodles and braised pork buns in front of the primary school. Now my cravings have been aroused, so I followed you all the way here," he explained with a smile. "Oh, I see." I nodded, finally understanding. This situation is not uncommon. Elderly people from the neighborhood would come to me every now and then to have something to eat. Besides fried beef noodles, what else would you like to eat? "More pork buns, please." "That one sold out." "What about green bean smoothie?" "A little bit," I answered, thinking that there was indeed some reserve in the constant temperature fresh-keeping box. He suddenly seemed to remember something, and his eyes lit up. "By the way, are you still selling crystal cakes? Do you still have that?" As soon as he said this, he looked a lot more energetic, like a child who had discovered a treasure. "Crystal cake?" I was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "There is still some left." Seeing his excited look, I couldn't help but wonder, how can this old man have such a good appetite? From what he said, he had already eaten a lot at the entrance of the elementary school, and now he ordered a lot more. He seemed to see my confusion, smiled and patted his belly, and said, "Don't worry, young man. I have an unusually big appetite." Back then, the people at Leikyaku all admired me. Leikyaku? I was a little confused. I had never heard of this place. Seeing me shaking my head, he continued, "It's normal that you haven't heard of it. It's a place that only locals in Shanghai know about." After saying this, he still looked mysterious, but I always felt that there was something hidden in his words. Chapter 101. I started to stir-fry the beef noodles in one go, and soon everything he Yongyan ordered was ready. He stood by and watched with fascination, even watching every step of flipping the wok carefully, with a look of surprise on his face. "Boss Su, your technique." He hesitated, but the admiration in his eyes could not be hidden. After he scanned the code to pay, I handed him the packed items and casually asked if he needed anything else. But he asked me tentatively, "Where do you plan to set up your stall in the afternoon and evening?" I was stunned for a moment, and then I told him that he could join my WeChat group and I would be notified of the location in real time. However, I also mentioned that the WeChat group was full, and I planned to create a penguin group to facilitate more people to join. He Yongyin nodded, indicating that he was willing to join the new group, and mentioned that he already had a penguin account. After returning to the house, I contacted the administrator of the group, Purple Good Mood. She agreed to help me set up a penguin group and took the initiative to assist the elderly in learning how to apply for an account, which saved me a lot of worry. Soon, the number of penguin groups exceeded 500, and even many elderly people joined in. This efficiency surprised me a little. After all, these uncles and aunts usually don't like to learn new things. The excitement in the group made me laugh and cry. A cool number called 52222 attracted everyone's attention, and everyone was guessing who the owner of this number was. Seeing everyone's discussion, I didn't think much about it and just focused on finishing the preparations for the afternoon. Mung bean paste, crystal cake, and the new product chicken tofu pudding are all the key items launched today. To be honest, I'm quite confident about the chicken tofu pudding. This dish is something I have been thinking about recently. The process is complicated, but the taste is definitely worth the expectation. I believe that customers will like it. After packing up the food cart, I went to the kitchen to check the ingredients again. Mung beans, glutinous rice flour, and chicken breasts were almost ready, and the next step was to find a suitable location to set up the stall. Boss Sue, what does the new chicken tofu taste like? Someone in the group couldn't wait to ask. I smiled and replied, "Come and try it this afternoon, and you'll know. I guarantee you'll like it." Chapter 102, Don't Eat It All. Leave some for me. Riding my electric tricycle, I sped along. The wind whistled past my ears, and I felt like I was driving a top-of-the-line sports car. With the tricycle in my hands, I could always control the speed to the limit, which was both safe and enjoyable. Soon, I arrived at the familiar vegetable market. It was near noon, and there were fewer people in the market. The morning bustle had faded. As soon as I stopped at the door, the owner of the disposable tableware came to greet me. "Boss Sue, are you here to buy tableware again?" He smiled brightly and habitually took out a cigarette and handed it to me, but suddenly remembered that he never smoked, so he simply lit one up himself and took a breath that made his whole body feel relaxed. "Pick whatever you want. I'll give you a discount no matter how much you need." He patted his chest and said his tone was sincere. He trusted me very much, knowing that I never bought on credit, and I always paid every penny. When I was picking out the things I needed, he suddenly shouted into the house, "Little boy, come out quickly. The brother Sue you're talking about is here." Immediately afterwards, a little boy of about 11 or 12 years old ran out with a bright smile. "Brother Sue, let me help you." The boy was so enthusiastic that I couldn't resist him. He took the initiative to run over and help me carry the tableware. Although I refused again and again, he still refused to give up. The boss looked at him and laughed. "Just let him help. Otherwise, how will he feel comfortable eating your food later? Besides, this kid is not good at studying, but he is very energetic. Maybe he will have to take over my job in the future." I felt a little helpless, but I didn't say much. The two of us worked very well together and soon moved all the tableware into the car. I took out 2 boxes of crystal cakes and 2 cups of green bean ice cream from the foam box and handed them to him. "Take it and eat it. Thank you for your help." I was also very happy when I saw the little boy excitedly taking it. He kept praising, "Brother Sue, the food you made is really delicious. It's simply invincible." The little boy looked up at me, his eyes full of expectation. "Brother Sue, why don't you take me to set up a stall in the future?" I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I reached out and rubbed his head. "Study hard and help your dad in the future." I paused and added, "How about this? When you get into the top 10 in the class, I will treat you to delicious food all day long. You can eat whatever you want." The little boy's eyes suddenly lit up. "Really? Brother Sue, you must keep your word." He nodded vigorously with a firm face. "Don't worry, I will work hard." Seeing him like that, I also felt it was a bit interesting. I finally had some motivation to study. The boss next to him was so amused that he said, "You little bastard, I've been trying to persuade and scold you every day, but it's useless. Your brother Sue just said a few words and gave you something to eat, and you've changed? You're too disappointing." The little boy looked indifferent and ran back to the house holding the crystal cake and mung bean shaved ice, shouting, "Mom, Brother Sue brought some delicious food again. Come and try it." Soon the proprietress's surprised voice was heard from the house. The boss shouted into the house, "Don't eat it all. Leave some for me." I looked at the lively family and couldn't help but smile, then rode my tricycle to continue my busy life. Chapter 103. Could it be that this man really had a life of speeding through life before? After paying the bill, I rode my electric tricycle to continue on my way. The boss originally said that the cost of tableware could be waived this time, but I insisted on making things one way or the other, so he finally gave me a 30 discount and gave me a lot of gifts, so I returned home with a lot of stuff. The next stop was the market. I needed to buy ingredients for the twice-cooked pork and the new chicken tofu pudding, especially the chicken tofu pudding, which had to be fresh and could not be sloppy. I went straight to the familiar pork stall. Boss Jung, I'm here to buy pork. As usual, fresh rump meat. As much as you want. I called out. As soon as Boss Jung saw me, he immediately smiled from ear to ear. Xiao Su, you buy so frequently. Your business must be very good. As he spoke, he deftly took out 30 pounds of buttock meat that he had reserved for me from the refrigerator. Look, this is all fresh meat that was just slaughtered this morning. The quality is absolutely top-notch. Boss Jung assured me, patting his chest. I nodded. The meat was fresh, tender, and firm, without any water. It really didn't disappoint me. After paying, I went to the chicken stall. For the chicken tofu, I had to buy the best chicken breasts. I picked 20 kilograms and bought a few kilograms of chicken racks as a backup. The price was so affordable that I was satisfied. Finally, eggs. Chicken tofu requires 20 eggs for the egg whites. I bought 50 kilograms of them at once and added some other ingredients: rice wine, Sichuan salt, garlic sprouts, fresh vegetable hearts. The tricycle was already full, and I was about to go home on it when my cell phone rang. I looked over and saw that it was teacher Zhang Qian from the kindergarten, and my heart skipped a beat. Has something happened to Su Nua? I heard Nua Nua's crying voice on the phone. I didn't ask much and just replied, I'll be there right away. After hanging up the phone, I rushed to the kindergarten at full speed. The vegetable market was not far from the kindergarten, and I rushed all the way. When I arrived at the gate, the security guard would not let me in, so I hurriedly called teacher Zhang, and she came out to take me in personally. On the way, I was thinking about all kinds of things. Did Nuonyuo have a fight with other kids? Or did he have a stomachache? I even wondered if he was sick. The more I thought about it, the more nervous I became. When she finally saw teacher Zhang, her expression was a little complicated, and she stammered, Nono's father, actually Nono, just knocked over his lunch. I was relieved to hear this, but also felt embarrassed. It turned out that the little one just accidentally spilled the food, which was why he was crying so hard and asked teacher Zhang to call me. Teacher Zhang smiled and comforted me. Your appearance just now scared me. I thought something serious happened. I scratched my head embarrassedly. Sorry, I was a little anxious just now. She looked at me, her tone full of envy. Nona is so lucky to have a father like you who cares about her so much. I smiled and squatted down to pat Nua Nua's head gently. Next time, what do you want to eat? Dad will make it for you, okay? In teacher Zhang's eyes, my behavior towards my daughter seemed particularly attractive. She even thought, I wish my future husband could care about the family half as much as Su Yang does. I really don't know what Nono's mother was thinking. She divorced such a good man? Chapter 104. Led by teacher Zhang Qian, I walked into the kindergarten cafeteria. As soon as I entered the door, although the floor had been cleaned, I could still see some traces of fried beef noodles and green bean-shaved ice. The familiar fragrance still lingered in the air, and even I couldn't help but sniff. The children around me swallowed their saliva, and it was obvious that the smell was too tempting for them. In the middle of the crowd, I saw Nuonyuo at a glance. The little girl was standing there, with tears on her face. It was obvious that she had just cried, but she was no longer crying. She just lowered her head with a wronged look on her face. Next to a chubby little boy was whispering an apology, his tone full of guilt. I'm sorry, Suino, I didn't mean it. Please don't cry. If you really can't, just eat my lunch. I almost laughed out loud when I heard this. This child seems to be quite responsible. In order to appease Nua, he even contributed his own beef and eggs, and even offered milk. It was really interesting, but Nuonyuo shook her head. She obviously didn't want to eat other people's food. Although the little boy didn't mean it, Nuonyuo was still a little unhappy, but she didn't get angry and kept silent. No. I called softly. Hearing my voice, the little girl raised her head instantly, with a flash of surprise in her eyes. Dad, she called out, and the grievances surged up again. She ran quickly into my arms with her short legs, buried her little face in my chest, and sobbed, Dad, the delicious food you made for Nuo is gone. I patted her back gently and said softly, What's wrong? Nuonyuo crying is not the little warrior I know. She raised her head and snorted angrily. Nanyuo is not crying. I couldn't help laughing and rubbed her hair. It's okay, Nuonyuo. Whatever you want to eat, Dad will make it for you in the future, and it will definitely taste better. After hearing what I said, the little girl finally burst into laughter. Teacher Zhang Qian also breathed a sigh of relief at this time. Looking at the other children gathered around, she quickly said, "Children, you haven't finished your meals yet. Go back to your seats and eat. If you are the last one to finish, you will have to move the table with me." When the children heard this, they quickly ran back to their seats, fearing that they would be forced to work. I couldn't help laughing when I saw this scene, thinking that teacher Zhang Qian really had a way. At this time, Nuonyuo raised her head, looked at me eagerly, and whispered, "Dad, Nuonyuo is hungry." Her voice was soft, and there was a little embarrassment on her face. It seemed that she was very tired from crying just now. Can I borrow the kindergarten's kitchen?" I turned to ask teacher Zhang Qian. She was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "Of course." When Nuonyuo heard this, he immediately jumped up excitedly. "Is Dad going to cook for Nuonyuo?" "But Nuonyuo can also eat the meals in the kindergarten." She said this, but her eyes were shining, and she didn't look like she wanted to eat the meals in the kindergarten at all. Chapter 105, by the way, is Su Yang's father also divorced? When I asked to use the kitchen to cook for Nuonyuo, the kids around me were excited and came to me. "Uncle, we want to eat your food too." They stared at me with sparkling eyes. Teacher Zhang Qian looked helpless and said quickly, "Go back and eat your meals." Her tone was a bit stern, and the children returned to their seats reluctantly, but they still turned their heads to stare at me from time to time. I felt a little embarrassed by being stared at. Nuonyuo saw my embarrassment and whispered, "Dad, I can eat the meals in the kindergarten, so you don't have to work hard." I was really touched by her sensible look. But I know that this little girl really wants to eat the food I cook. She has always been picky about food and is very sensitive to taste. Add to that the little grievance she just had. How could I let her put up with it? I looked at teacher Zhang Qian and spoke again. "Teacher Zhang, can I borrow the kitchen? I will use my own ingredients, and I brought some on my electric tricycle." She was stunned and obviously a little embarrassed. After thinking for a while, teacher Zhang said softly, "I'll go ask the aunties in the cafeteria. They and I have a good relationship." I quickly nodded to express my gratitude, and Nuo happily kissed me on the face. "Dad, you're so nice." The little guy smiled sweetly. The children around him were all envious. Even Nono's good friend Yaya looked longing, as if she wanted a dad like me. After a while, teacher Zhang came back and said to me, "The cafeteria aunt agreed, but you have to make sure the kitchen is not messy. She still has to clean up." I nodded quickly. "Thank you, teacher Zhang. Thank you so much." I pushed the tricycle to the entrance of the kindergarten and took some pork and other ingredients into the kitchen. The kitchen was very clean. The kitchen utensils had just been cleaned, and the water stains were not yet dry, which made me feel relieved. After all, the health of the children is the first priority. The auntie in the cafeteria was standing next to the stove, glanced at me, and said unfriendly, "Are you the parent who wants to borrow the kitchen? You don't look like you can cook." She looked at me, obviously a little suspicious. I smiled and didn't explain much. I went to the sink and washed the pork and vegetables I brought. She watched from the side, her face full of suspicion. "These kids say it's delicious. But you made it?" She continued to mutter with a bit of dissatisfaction in her tone. I didn't explain, just wanted to let the taste speak for itself. I cut the pork with smooth movements and neat knife skills. The aunt in the kitchen couldn't help but look surprised. She obviously didn't expect that my knife skills were so professional. "It looks okay, go ahead." She nodded reluctantly, but her eyes were fixed on me, as if waiting to see how I would turn these ingredients into a meal. Chapter 106. Shocked, Su Yang's knife skills are so perfect. You can use the stove and kitchen utensils here, but remember to keep them clean after use. The aunt in the kitchen spoke with a tone that was a bit majestic, but without any malice. "If you need help, you can call them." She pointed to the assistants beside her and spoke with a bit of confidence, obviously very proud of her cooking skills. I smiled and replied softly, "No, I'm enough on my own, just some home cooking." My tone was calm, without any annoyance. After all, I was the one who borrowed the kitchen, so there was no need to argue with others. I glanced at the seasonings in the kitchen and nodded secretly. There were all kinds of seasonings, including soy sauce and MSG. Compared with those so-called healthy food places, this place was obviously much more down to earth. When I started to prepare the ingredients, the chef kept staring at me with a tentative and even unconvinced look in her eyes. Obviously, She didn't have any expectations of my ability. Dad, let me help you wash the vegetables. Nuonyuo's sweet voice came. The little guy squeezed next to me, his face full of anticipation. I handed her the basket and said with a smile, "Okay, then Nuonyuo, help Daddy wash the garlic sprouts and make them clean and beautiful." Got it. I promised to complete the task. Nuonyuo jumped 3 feet high in excitement. Teacher Zhangqian quickly brought a small stool over so that she could stand higher, and carefully stood by her side to prevent her from falling. Watching Nuonyuo's skillful movements while washing vegetables, I couldn't help but feel warm in my heart. Although this little guy is young, he has always been very sensible and always likes to help me with small chores. I started to process the pork. First, I rinsed it in ice water and then cut it into thin slices. This process required precise knife skills, both fast and steady. When cutting vegetables, I was fully focused, and my hands moved quickly and the knife fell without any hesitation. Good knife skills. The aunt from the kitchen behind her couldn't help but sigh. The hostility from before was finally gone from her tone, replaced by a hint of surprise. She stared at the pork on the chopping board, which was cut into exactly the same thickness, with each slice of meat being about 2 millimeters thick. She obviously understood that this was not something that an ordinary chef could achieve. There is nothing special about knife skills. It only depends on practice. She seemed to remember her master's teachings, and there was a hint of emotion on her face. I ignored her and continued to focus on the work at hand. Although she didn't say anything, I could feel the surprise and growing admiration in her eyes. These neatly sliced meat pieces are the result of years of practice. Every cut must be done with care, and every move must be perfect. Chapter 107, Who Can Stand This Cooking Speed? Dad, I've washed them. Nuonyuo ran over with a basket of washed vegetables, her face full of anticipation. I took the vegetables, touched her little head, and said with a smile, "Nanyuo is awesome." The preparations were just finished, and I took a deep breath and started the next step. The whole kitchen suddenly became quiet, and everyone's eyes were focused on me. The moment I started to work, my speed was very fast, but my movements were steady and smooth, like a precise machine. The kitchen stove became my stage, and every movement was confident and skillful. The kitchen ladies who had doubted me were stunned. They probably thought I was being modest, but they didn't expect that I really didn't need anyone's help. In just a few minutes, a rich aroma wafted out of the pot. I picked up the handle of the pot and shook it, skillfully stir-frying the garlic sprouts and twice-cooked pork, and the aroma instantly filled the whole kitchen. Wow, it smells so good. Teacher Zhang Qian behind me couldn't help swallowing her saliva, and her face flushed, as if she had just woken up from some fantasy. The aroma became stronger and stronger, making people salivate. When the whole dish came out of the pot, the tempting aroma was almost irresistible. I put the garlic sprouts and pork on the plate, and the aroma was overwhelming. "It smells so good." The Annie in the kitchen finally couldn't help but speak. The arrogance and suspicion she had when she first saw it were no longer on her face, but instead was replaced by deep admiration and amazement. "Dad, is the twice-cooked pork ready?" "Nuonyuo is hungry." Nuonyuo's baby voice rang out. She stared at the twice-cooked pork on the plate with her eyes wide open, saliva almost dripping from the corners of her mouth. I smiled and touched her little head. "Wait a little longer. Daddy still hasn't cooked 2 dishes." Nuonyuo pouted a little disappointedly, but still nodded obediently. "Well, Dad, you have to hurry up, otherwise your baby daughter will starve to death," she said while trying hard not to stare at the twice-cooked pork on the plate. I turned to the chef and said, "Excuse me, can I use that pot over there?" The other party nodded. At this moment, he had already been completely conquered by me, and even his tone became exceptionally kind. I heated oil in 2 woks at the same time and started to stir-fry beef noodles and scrambled eggs with tomatoes. The 2 dishes required completely different heat and seasonings, but I did not mess up at all. "This," Teacher Zhang Qian behind him widened her eyes, as if she couldn't believe that one person could control 2 pots at the same time and do it so accurately and skillfully. Even Noah was dancing with excitement. "So handsome. Dad is really the most handsome man in the world." I smiled and continued to stir-fry, and the aroma filled the whole kitchen again. Chapter 108, Teacher, why is your face red again? The aroma of dry fried beef noodles and fried tomato and eggs quickly spread in the kitchen, and the rich aroma filled the entire kitchen with temptation. The air was filled with a smell that made people unable to stop. Looking at the aroma emanating from the pot, the corners of my mouth slightly raised. This is the magic of cooking. Whether it is an ordinary home-cooked dish or a signature dish, as long as you put your heart into it, you can make people feel happy. Why is everything Soo-young cooks so delicious? I heard someone behind me whispering in amazement. This made me smile, but I didn't look back, concentrating on finishing the last detail. Although scrambled eggs with tomatoes is simple, thanks to the chef god system, my understanding of ingredients and cooking time has been deeply rooted in my bones. Even without the blessing of the system, this dish can be made almost perfect. The 3 dishes were all finished in less than 20 minutes. I looked at the table of delicious food and nodded with satisfaction. Teacher Zhang Qian's face turned red again. I asked curiously, "Teacher Zhang, why are you blushing again?" "Ah, nothing." She waved her hands in panic, her face getting even redder. I couldn't help but laugh at her expression. "Teacher Zhang, do you want to try it together? Haven't you had lunch yet?" Upon hearing my invitation, Teacher Zhang Qian was obviously stunned for a moment, with some surprise and joy in her eyes, but she was still reserved. "This isn't a good idea. I also have my own meal." But before she finished her words, she had already honestly served 3 bowls of rice to me, and even served herself a bowl unconsciously. I didn't say much when I saw this. I just smiled. "Teacher Zhang, you and Nuonuo go to the dining room first. I'll clean up the kitchen," I said as I sorted out the pots and bowls. However, the Annie in the kitchen came over quickly, with an extremely enthusiastic attitude. "No need. I'll take care of these. You guys go and eat." I was stunned for a moment. I was not used to her humble expression. I missed her rebellious look just now. But I didn't insist and walked to the restaurant with Nuonuo and Zhang Qian. As soon as we walked out of the kitchen, all the children in the restaurant stood up, staring at the plates in our hands, craning their necks, their eyes full of desire and envy. "It smells so good. Is this the meal cooked by Su Inua's father? I really want to have a bite." No, take a bite and show us if it tastes good." The children were discussing it in a buzzing voice, drooling. Nuonuo didn't care about these things at all. As soon as she sat down, she started to eat like crazy. The first bite of the twice-cooked pork, the fat and lean meat slices filled her mouth with freshness and fragrance, making her little face full of happiness and satisfaction. Teacher Zhang Qian, who was standing by, couldn't help but taste the twice-cooked pork, and her eyes lit up instantly. She ate most of the rice in a blink of an eye, and it seemed that she couldn't stop eating. "Soo-young, your cooking is so delicious. The twice-cooked pork and the stir-fried beef noodles are absolutely amazing." Teacher Zhang Qian couldn't help but sigh as she ate, a satisfied smile on her face. Chapter 109, We Are All Su Inua's Good Friends. It's not cooked by the cafeteria Annie. It's cooked by Su Inua's father. The children's voices came one after another, and the parents gathered at the cafeteria door were also attracted by the fragrance. Is this boy's cooking skill really that good? I can smell the fragrance right here. Look, those kids are drooling. Even the adults couldn't help but sigh. The smell was so tempting. Looking at the eager eyes of the children, I couldn't help but laugh. "Children, come over here too. Uncle will serve you some food." Hearing this, the children who were originally nervous suddenly became excited, and each of them showed an excited smile that could not be concealed. "Thank you, Uncle. Uncle is so nice. Uncle, I only need to take a small bite. I am Su Inua's good friend. Uncle, I am also Nuonuo's good friend. We have a very good relationship." The most amazing one was a chubby little boy who said confidently, "Uncle, I have to tell you a secret. I'm Su Inua's boyfriend, so you have to give me a few more pieces of twice-cooked pork." I was speechless, but no, I couldn't sit still anymore, and immediately glared at the little boy. "Zhou Karen, shut up. Who is your girlfriend? Believe it or not, I will beat you up." Seeing Nuonua clench her fist, Zhou Kailan immediately panicked. "Uncle, I'm kidding. I'm not her boyfriend. We are just ordinary friends." "Humph." Nuonuo snorted coldly and continued to lower his head to concentrate on eating. I shook my head helplessly. The children were indeed more dramatic than the others. Next, I picked up my chopsticks and started serving food to the children in line. I served everyone some dry fried beef noodles, twice-cooked pork, and scrambled eggs with tomatoes. Teacher Zhang Qian also joined in to help maintain order. "Zhang Xingxing, why is it you again? Line up properly." As soon as Teacher Zhang Qian's majesty came out, the children immediately became much more well-behaved. Although they were very greedy, they still lined up properly according to the rules. However, there were too many children, with more than 20 children in one class, and I only made 3 dishes, which were not enough for so many people. At first, everyone could get a little bit of food, but later, They could only get one dish based on the child's choice. The children at the back of the line had almost nothing on their plates. "Uncle, I want to eat the scrambled eggs." When it was Zhou Kailan's turn, he whispered again. But just as I was about to respond, teacher Zhang Qian said, "No, children should know how to share. Other children haven't had it yet." Zhou Kailan was a little disappointed after hearing this, but he still obediently closed his mouth and concentrated on eating the twice-cooked pork in the bowl. He said excitedly while eating, "It's so delicious. Uncle, the meat you cooked is simply delicious from heaven." Looking at the expectant eyes of the children behind me, I felt sorry for them, so I turned to teacher Zhang Qian and said, "Teacher Zhang, please comfort these children first. I will go to the kitchen to cook some more dishes." Zhang Qian nodded, and when the children heard that I still had to cook, they immediately quieted down and stood still obediently, their faces full of anticipation. When I returned to the kitchen, the aunt in charge had already prepared everything. She looked at me and said with a smile, "Nono's father, it's okay. You can use the kitchen as you like. Just let me know if you need anything." I nodded and wasted no time in preparing new ingredients. These kids love my dishes so much, so I'll give them enough for everyone. Chapter 110. Su Inua's father. Can I record the process of your cooking? Just this dish of twice-cooked pork with garlic sprouts will do. I'm from Sichuan. The kitchen lady seemed a little embarrassed, but her eyes showed a bit of expectation and unwillingness. After all, twice-cooked pork with garlic sprouts is an authentic Sichuan dish, but I, a foreigner, can cook it better than her. I smiled and shrugged. Sure, no problem. This was nothing to me. After all, my dream was not to become a top chef. I started to prepare the second plate of twice-cooked pork with garlic sprouts. My movements were still smooth and skillful. With my fingertips dancing, I cut the vegetables, stir-fried, and took the food out of the pot, all in one go, as if I was performing an art. In less than a few minutes, a generous serving of twice-cooked pork with garlic sprouts was ready. The aroma filled the kitchen again, and I walked out of the kitchen with the plate in my hand and saw the children's eyes were shining. "Uncle has made it again. It smells so good, so good." The children cheered and jumped for joy. This time, I specially added more meat and ingredients to ensure that every child could have a few pieces. Teacher Zhang Qian watched from the side and shook her head helplessly. "These little greedy kids, there's really nothing we can do about you." She smiled and helped maintain order, organizing the children into lines one by one. Seeing their satisfied expressions, I was also very happy, especially when I saw Nuonuo surrounded by a group of children and became the star of the class. I felt more relieved. After distributing the dishes, I said to teacher Zhang Qian, "Teacher Zhang, I'll leave the children to you. I'll go back first." She nodded and smiled as she saw me to the door. Along the way, the children waved their hands and shouted, "Uncle, come again. Uncle, will you come tomorrow? Uncle, can you be my dad? My mom is so beautiful." I couldn't help but smile, waved goodbye, and left. The guard at the door was stunned. This is the first time I've seen a student's parents so popular. When I got home, I parked my electric tricycle and started preparing a new dish for the afternoon, chicken tofu pudding. The preparation process of this state-level dish is quite complicated, and it is difficult for ordinary people to master it. However, I have done a lot of homework, and with systematic guidance and my own experience, I am fully confident that I can reduce the cost of this dish while retaining its classic taste. I know that when selling food on the street, the price must be affordable. No matter how delicious the food is, it will not sell if the price is too high. My goal has always been to let more people eat delicious food. I prepared a big pot and started to stew chicken soup. I put the old hen I bought into the pot, added some secret seasonings, and stewed it to bring out a rich aroma. Traditional chicken soup needs 4 or 5 hours of slow cooking, but I don't have that much time, so I optimized the process a little. I first fried the chicken skin to bring out the aroma, then added the chicken rack and seasonings, and stewed it in a large pot. This not only saves time, but also makes the soup more fragrant and taste just as good as the traditional method. This is my understanding of food, to do the best in a simple way. Chapter 111. The key to this dish of chicken tofu pudding lies in the processing of the chicken breast. In order to achieve the same delicate taste as vegetarian tofu pudding, I first completely remove the white fascia of the chicken breast, leaving no trace of tendons. Next, I gently beat the chicken with the back of a knife, repeatedly beating the meat to make it soft and give it the same solidified texture as tofu pudding. This step cannot be skipped, and if you neglect it, the finished product will lose its smooth and tender taste. At the same time, the chicken soup in the pot was almost done. I took a closer look and smelled the rich aroma. I knew that this chicken soup was exactly what I had imagined in my mind. Next, I took out the local eggs I bought and cracked them open to separate the egg white from the egg yolk. The egg white was used to make chicken tofu pudding, while the egg yolk was saved to make caramel brulee for Nono in the evening. The egg whites of more than 20 eggs filled a large bowl, and I picked up the egg beater and stirred vigorously until the egg whites formed dense foam. Then I poured it into the beaten chicken paste and mixed it with the sweet potato starch. Sweet potato starch is the key ingredient, which allows the chicken puree to aggregate better and finally present a crystal clear tofu pudding. After stirring evenly, I filtered the chicken soup to remove all the residue and chicken bones, leaving a pure soup base. The chicken soup in the pot boiled again, and I carefully put the stirred chicken paste into the soup and increased the heat. Soon, the chicken soup in the pot began to boil, and the chicken paste gradually spread out and turned into pieces of tofu pudding. Then I turned the heat back to low and used a spoon to carefully press the surface of each piece of chicken tofu to adjust their shape. This process took nearly 20 minutes, but every detail could not be wrong. When the chickpea pudding is fully formed, I spread a layer of fresh pea tips on the bottom of a large bowl and put the chickpea pudding into the bowl. The scene in front of me is amazing. The snow-white chickpea pudding is dotted with tender green pea tips, like a green and white landscape painting. I took a bite and it melted in my mouth. It was as tender as tofu pudding, but more layered than tofu pudding. Paired with a mouthful of rich chicken soup, it was extremely delicious. The taste that was hard to tell whether it was real or fake made me feel very interesting and satisfied. After putting all the chicken tofu pudding into plastic boxes, I put them in the constant temperature fresh-keeping box. This magical device can keep the dishes in peak condition, as if they were just out of the pot. This is my secret weapon. I used nearly 30 kilograms of chicken breast to make 150 servings of chicken tofu. I wiped the sweat off my forehead, feeling a sense of accomplishment. But this was just the beginning. The mung beans on the other side of the stove were almost cooked, so I had to start making mung bean smoothie right away. Making mung bean shaved ice and crystal cake is easy for me. But in order to satisfy the more than 700 hungry diners in the Penguin Group, I have to prepare more. After more than 2 hours, all the ingredients were finally ready. I looked at the time, and it was exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, the best time to go out and set up the stall. Today's destination is Tainyuokyo Square. It is said that Jay Chou's concert is being held there, and the fans are so enthusiastic that the tickets are in short supply. I know that such an occasion is a perfect opportunity to set up a stall. Chapter 112. In the afternoon, we will set up a stall at Tainyuokyo Square. If you happen to be nearby, you are welcome to come and taste it. This time we have a new product, chicken tofu pudding. After I sent this notification to the Penguin Group, within a few seconds, the news exploded. What? Boss Sue is setting up a stall at Tianjua Bridge Square this afternoon. What a coincidence. I just happened to be taking my girlfriend to Jay Chou's concert. Listening to Jay Chou singing while eating Boss Sue's delicious food, it's the pinnacle of life. Someone even joked in the group. Is it possible that Jay Chou got fat because he ate Boss Sue's delicious food? Seeing the excitement in the group, I couldn't help but laugh, but I didn't have time to look at it anymore. I rode my tricycle straight to the destination. When I arrived at Tianjia Bridge Square, I was shocked by the huge crowds of people. As expected, where there is excitement, there are opportunities. In particular, there are already many street vendors here, selling wolf-tooth potatoes, spicy hot pot, bobo chicken. What's even more interesting is that I saw a cake stall with a signboard that said Zhou Bing Luan. There were quite a few people surrounding the stall, and those who didn't know would have thought that it was really Jay Chou himself selling cakes. I was worried about the bad location of the stall, but luckily there was an empty spot in the row of stalls. I don't know if the previous stall owner had sold out and closed up early, but I didn't hesitate to set up the stall and put up my own signs: dry fried beef noodles, crystal cake, and chicken tofu pudding. The stall owners around me cast curious glances at me, their eyes full of "what is this guy doing?" Obviously, they thought my menu was inappropriate. After all, most of the stall owners sold snacks and drinks. Who would eat staple foods while watching a concert? Some people even laugh secretly. Other people on the stage are singing. The blue sky is waiting for the misty rain, and they are singing "Chow Beef Noodles is waiting for you over here." I heard it but ignored it. I just smiled and continued to set up the stall. To be honest, I'm not worried about business. With so many people gathered here, there's no way that no one would buy anything to eat. Add to that my regular customers, and I'm sure the place will soon be busy. The bustle of the square made me sigh. This is Jay Chou's charm. Although there are not many new songs in recent years, he is still a top star, and no one can beat him. Looking at the fans in the crowd wearing peripheral clothes and waving light sticks, I couldn't help but think back to the first time I listened to Rice Fragrance. I still remember you said that home is the only castle, and it continues to run along the river of Rice Fragrance. At that time, this song really gave me a lot of strength, and even Little Noonyo loves it so much now. As I was thinking about this, I was tidying up my stall and couldn't help but sigh in my heart. If I had the chance to travel back in time and copy all of Jay Chou's songs, I would probably be a top singer now. Chapter 113. Boss, give me a serving of stinky tofu. 2 skewers of grilled sausages, thank you. I want fried chicken. The lively atmosphere of Tainyokyo Square made me sigh with emotion. The flow of people here was as expected. The surrounding stalls were packed with people, and every stall owner was busy. Only my stall seemed deserted, and no customers came to visit. I can see that many people will take a second look at my stall when they pass by, especially girls who look at my sign but shake their heads. Stir-fried beef noodles? Twice-cooked pork? Chicken tofu pudding? These main dishes are obviously not suitable in this scene. They were probably thinking who would stand and eat beef noodles at a concert. It was hot and heavy, totally out of place. Although I could sense that people around me liked my appearance, it was obviously not enough to make them want to stop and eat. I didn't pay much attention to it, since I had just started my stall. I knew my customers would come eventually, so I waited patiently. Just then, my phone rang. It was a video message from teacher Zhang Xian. I smiled, knowing that little boy Su Inua was probably busy again. Sure enough, after the video was connected, Nua's smiling face came into view. Dad! She called in a baby voice and waved her hands, obviously in a good mood. The table in front of her was piled with candies, chocolates, and potato chips. Needless to say, this was the result of bribery from the kindergarten children. Eat less sweets and watch your teeth. I reminded him with a smile. Got it, Dad? She nodded, and then saw the scene of people coming and going in the background of the video, and immediately asked curiously, Dad, are you setting up a stall again? There are so many people. Where are you? There's a concert at Tainyokyo Square. I answered casually and turned the camera of my phone to point it at the large poster hanging in the center of the square, which was a promotional picture of Jay Chou's concert. Wow, it's Jay Chou. Nua's eyes lit up instantly. Dad, I'm his fan. You can't watch the concert secretly. I want his autograph. I couldn't help but laugh. Dad doesn't have time to watch the concert. He just happened to pass by. As for the autograph, I spread my hands. It's probably hard to get. Dad is just a fried beef noodle seller, and being able to stand outside the square is already the limit. Nua was a little disappointed, but also very sensible. It's okay, Dad. I just said it casually. Just when Nono and I were happily chatting, a large group of people suddenly rushed towards my booth. Before I could react, they started talking enthusiastically. Boss Sue, we finally found you. I came here for the new chicken tofu. Stop talking. Give me 2 servings of fried beef noodles first. My stomach is growling with hunger. A group of people were talking at once, not giving me a chance to get a word in. They lined up spontaneously, their movements so neatly that I was a little confused. The stall owners around me were all stunned. They stopped what they were doing and stared at me with wide eyes. Soon, a long queue formed in front of my stall with at least 40 or 50 people. This stall sells fried beef noodles? How can there be so many people lining up? Someone nearby couldn't help but ask, Brother, is this fried beef noodles delicious? As a result, the people in the queue all showed mysterious expressions. It's not delicious. It's really terrible. Don't waste your money. Yes, it's really terrible. Don't eat here. Let's go. Listening to these people's serious persuasion to quit, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. These people said no, but their bodies were honest, and they wanted to eat a few more bites. Chapter 114. The passers-by who were queuing just now heard the people in front of them seriously trying to persuade them to leave, saying that the food was not tasty and not worth eating. But when they turned around, they found that these people were queuing eagerly and even looked expectant. Isn't this a scam? Nuonuo on the other end of the video was excited to see so many people suddenly flocking to my stall, but he still reminded me a few words. Dad, don't work too hard, and then hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, I didn't delay and immediately heated up the oil in the pan. As soon as the minced garlic and chili peppers were put into the pan, with a sizzle, the fragrance instantly burst out, and the people around were stunned, and the passers-by who were still watching the excitement suddenly shut up. Smells so good. It's just out of the pot. How can it smell so good? Watching the rice noodles being stir-fried in the pot, more people were attracted by the aroma and stood in front of my stall, as if they were enjoying a street performance. As the soy sauce was added to the pot, the aroma became even stronger, even covering up the aroma of the Odin soul nearby. Sure enough, only Boss Sue can make this taste. Although I have eaten it several times, I always feel something new every time. Wow, I can't take it anymore. My saliva is about to flow out. I can feel the complicated looks from the stall owners around me. At first they thought I was just making trouble, but now they all give me surprised expressions. Fuck, it smells so good. And you still say it's not delicious? The passerby in front finally understood and turned around to glare at the shills in front of him. One of the big brothers in the queue said with a wry smile, "Hey, don't you want fewer people to compete with us? It's too tiring to queue every time." I was cooking beef noodles and listening to these people's serious nonsense. I almost couldn't help laughing. To be honest, every time I see old customers fighting wits and courage for my food, I feel very happy. Soon, the line began to grow longer and longer. From the original 40 or 50 people, it suddenly expanded to 70 or 80 people. Most of the newcomers were passersby, who came here for the smell of the fragrance, and some old fans came from other parts of Shanghai. The old man selling fried skewers next to him almost cried, "What kind of stall is this?" The boss doesn't have any pressure at all. It's all about the customers lining up. The guy selling starch sausages was also anxious and tried to greet the customers in line. "Handsome guy, beautiful girl, would you like 2 grilled sausages?" Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to him. Those people stared at the fried beef noodles in my pot as if they were afraid of missing something, and they didn't even notice the existence of other stalls. Is there no one eating grilled sausages anymore? The young man's expression gradually became desperate. In fact, I know that my stall attracts not only the old fans of fried beef noodles, but also the charm of other delicacies. Whether it is twice-cooked pork, crystal cake, or today's new product chicken tofu pudding, each one is fragrant enough to make people unable to stop. Even the concert staff were attracted here. They originally wanted to look for Zhou Bingluan, who was rumored to attract fans with his face, but they were stopped by the fragrance from my side. "Whose fried beef noodles are so delicious?" I looked up and said with a smile, "If you want to try it, get in line at the back." Chapter 115. There's actually chicken tofu pudding? Can this thing be sold on the street? I couldn't help but smile as I heard the exclamations of several new customers. Yes, chicken tofu pudding is not a common dish sold at street stalls, but nothing I make is out of the ordinary. Although the stall owners around me all looked as if they had seen a ghost when they saw me using such dishes to run a street stall, I still calmly packed a portion of chicken tofu pudding for the customer at the front of the line. He opened the box, and the jade-white chicken tofu was bathed in golden chicken soup. The aroma spread with the hot air, instantly attracting everyone's attention. This is too good to be true. He's here for an art exhibition, right? Why is he setting up a stall? TSK. Using state banquet quality dishes to set up a street stall, isn't this bullying his peers? Everyone was talking about it, but their eyes were fixed on the box of chicken tofu pudding. The customer at the front of the line was obviously a little embarrassed by the onlookers, and only after everyone's urging did he carefully scoop a spoonful and put it into his mouth. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he seemed to be electrocuted. "How is it?" someone couldn't help but ask. After he swallowed it, he sighed exaggeratedly. "It's so special. It's really invincible perfection." The people around him were stunned, but he was completely immersed in his own world, eating one spoonful after another and couldn't stop. The satisfied expression on his face drove everyone crazy. "This smells so good, doesn't it?" He acted so convincingly. No, this expression can't be faked at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the line suddenly stretched to more than 10 meters longer, and the customers in the front began to scramble excitedly. "Boss Sue, I want chicken tofu pudding too. I want 5." You are so shameless. The purchase of chicken tofu pudding is limited to 1 serving. Don't you know that? Some people simply used their last trump card and shouted at me. "Boss Sue, my sister admires you very much." "Boss Sue, my sister said she wants to come to the scene to confess her love to you." "Boss Sue, I have a female friend who is very fond of you." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I shook my head and said, "The purchase of chicken tofu pudding is limited to 1 serving, so there's no need to talk about all this nonsense." Then he continued to work, packing the chicken tofu, putting in the pot into boxes, and handing them to the customers in line. Although I have heard these words so many times, I still feel satisfied in my heart. Whether they are sincere or joking, such support makes me happy. The expressions of those customers who finally got to eat the chicken tofu pudding were even more amazing. Longwa cuisine is awesome. You can't see the chicken when you eat it, and you can't see the meat when you eat it. I never thought I could eat this level of state banquet food at a street stall. Boss Sue, you're kidding. I even heard someone mutter quietly. It feels better than our wedding night. Not far away, a few concert staff members came for Zhou Bingluan, but when they passed by my stall, they were attracted by the aroma and said while queuing, "The fried beef noodles and chicken tofu pudding are simply the ceiling among the street stalls." Gradually, the line in front of my stall circled the square, and the expressions of other stall owners nearby were more exciting than each other. The guy selling starch sausages wanted to cry, but had no tears. Seeing that my line had already reached his stall, he leaned over and tried to shout, "2 grilled sausages, please?" Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to him. The people in the queue were staring at my cooking movements, and they had no time to think about other temptations. Brothers, are you here to listen to Jay Chou's concert? Or to queue up for food? Even the fans who had just arrived couldn't help but ask. We want to grab it with both hands, and we want to make it strong with both hands. The customer in line answered with a smile, and turned around and couldn't help urging me. "Boss Sue, hurry up. When will the next fried beef noodles be ready?" I couldn't help but smile and continued to wave the spatula. This scene was indeed a bit ridiculously lively. Chapter 116. Boss Sue, is the food not ready yet? We really can't wait any longer. It's so frustrating to only smell the fragrance, but not be able to taste it. The customers in the queue behind him kept urging him, and one even directly suggested, "Boss Sue, how about I help you pack it up, and you can focus on cooking beef noodles first?" Yes, 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 we'll pack it ourselves. The people behind us should also be more conscientious and stop leaving Boss Sue to work alone. Hearing what everyone said, I nodded and agreed to their proposal. Anyway, these are old customers. They won't mess around. After all, whoever dares to take more, I'm afraid he won't even be able to find my stall next time, and other customers won't let him off easily. At this moment, Tianyao Bridge Square is really bustling. Originally, the vendors here were all very happy because of Jay Chou's concert, but now they can only watch the long queue in front of my stall, their eyes full of complicated emotions. What's even more exaggerated is that some people brought their own white rice to go with my twice-cooked pork and chicken tofu. It tasted so delicious that the people queuing around were staring at it with their mouths watering and almost pounced on it. "This is too outrageous," the kebab vendor next to him muttered. "Are we here to set up a stall or attend a state banquet?" Many people lined up in the square, and some even gave me a thumbs up and praised my food loudly. "Boss Sue, this is state banquet quality. With this level, why are you still setting up a stall? Just open a 5-star hotel." I responded with a smile. 5-star hotels don't offer freedom, so I still prefer to cook something delicious for the common people. At this time, the cell phone rang. It was a message from the Penguin Group. Some people came from other places specially, and some people pretended to go to the toilet and sneaked out of the company just to have a bite. "Boss Sue, I'd like a cup of mung bean shaved ice. I'd like crystal cake and fried beef noodles. Do you have any more chicken tofu pudding? Don't tell me they're sold out." While I was busy, I also noticed some familiar figures. Mr. Will waved excitedly. He Yongyin came with his assistant, and even Fang Xiaoya. She was standing in front of the line with an undisguised look of anticipation on her face. Just then her cell phone rang. After she answered it, she instantly looked helpless. "What? Sister Fei Fei?" 2 servings of crystal cake, 1 serving of chicken tofu pudding, 2 cups of green bean shaved ice, and 2 servings of stir-fried beef noodles? I was stunned. This isn't. Soon, I saw Fang Xiaoya's expression change from expectation to despair. She muttered, "I gave all this to Qiao Fei Fei. What else should I eat? Did she eat Boss Sue?" I couldn't help but laugh when I heard her say that. At this time, the queue in the square was getting longer and longer, even circling several times. Even the staff who were originally responsible for the layout of the gymnasium were nowhere to be seen. It was said that they were also queuing in the queue. Several stall owners nearby were going crazy. "This is too outrageous. Is he here to set up a stall or to hold a concert?" Chapter 117. At Tianyao Bridge Square, I was busy with my stall, but I noticed a woman in the crowd with a great figure wearing a white baseball cap and sunglasses. Her long legs were wrapped in black tights, slender and long, and she was the type who would attract attention wherever she went. She looked around in the crowd for a while, and suddenly stopped a customer who had just bought something from my stall and said in a seductive voice, "Handsome guy, sell me what you have at 5 times the price." I couldn't help but smile when I heard this. This kind of thing happens several times a day, but I didn't expect a character of this level to join in today. I stopped what I was doing and secretly observed the scene. The customer's answer was decisive. Dream on. I won't sell it to you even if it's 50 times the price, let alone 5 times the price. Go and queue up by yourself. Before he finished speaking, he had already walked away in a leisurely manner with a serving of fried beef noodles, leaving the young lady standing there, a little stunned. At this moment, a young girl next to him suddenly screamed excitedly. Yongmi! Oh my god! You are Yongmi, right? It was Yongmi? I was a little surprised. I didn't expect a big star to be in the crowd. The girl was so excited that she seemed to have seen a rare treasure. Several people around her also started to whisper, It's Yongmi. She's queuing here too. Yongmi was obviously a little embarrassed. She pressed down the brim of her hat and whispered, Shu, keep your voice down. Don't let others know I'm here. Unfortunately, the spotlight was already full, and people's eyes shifted from my booth to hers. At this time, I noticed that Yongmi walked towards the girl who recognized her just now, showing her signature sweet smile, and said in a coquettish tone, Little sister, I'm really hungry. Can I have some of what you just bought? When the girl heard this, she was obviously in a dilemma. I saw her looking at the food in her hand, then secretly glancing at Yongmi, as if she was having a hard time making a choice. Sister me, how about I go buy you some roasted pig's trotters and hand-pulled pancakes? I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. What a joke. He was indeed an old customer of my stall. He couldn't bear to part with my things and actually thought of using other snacks to trick Yongmi. Yongmi was obviously stunned, and her smiling face froze. She probably didn't expect that she, a top star, couldn't even beg for a box of fried beef noodles. I could see it clearly from the back of the stall and wondered if I should intervene to mediate. After all, if a celebrity like Yongmi had some minor friction with my customers, my stall would probably become a hot topic if the news got out. At this time, the girl said again, Sister me, you can actually queue up by yourself. What Boss Sue makes is worth waiting for. After listening to this, Yongmi glanced at the long line, took a deep breath, and looked towards me, as if she was thinking about something. My men were also busy packing for other customers in line. Obviously, she really needed to think carefully about whether to continue to beg others or to stand in line. Chapter 118. I glanced at Yongmi in front of me and shook my head. This woman has a really strong aura, and her eyes showed a determination to never give up until she achieves her goal. She shook her head with disdain at the female student's suggestion. Don't bother. I just want to eat at this restaurant. After that, she took off her sunglasses and stared at the other person with her pitiful eyes. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I really don't believe that Yongmi could put on such a pitiful expression. If it were a man, he would probably kneel down. The female student gritted her teeth, still a little hesitant. Seeing this, Yongmi continued to add, How about this? I'll give you an autographed photo with blessings. How about that? Then she added, We can also take a photo together, the kind with hugs. I almost laughed out loud when I heard the word hug. Yongmi's method was really flawless. Even I could feel that her attack was too strong. Sure enough, the girl's face began to relax. Can I give you a portion of fried beef noodles? The female student asked tentatively. Yongmi didn't miss this opportunity and asked with a smile, What about the others? What are these? A crystal cake, chicken tofu pudding, and mung bean smoothie. The female student answered a little reluctantly. How about giving me another box of crystal cake and a cup of mung bean smoothie? Yongmi continued to test. There is a purchase limit on crystal cakes. Sister me, stop talking. Yongmi suddenly clapped her hands. How about this? I'll add you on WeChat, and we'll be sisters from now on. Is that okay? This time, the female student couldn't hold it anymore and nodded. The final transaction was a plate of fried beef noodles, a box of crystal cake, and a cup of green bean shaved ice in exchange for Yongmi's autographed photo, a hug and photo, and a WeChat message. Seeing this scene, I felt that Yongmi was really good. Soon after, Yongmi left the booth with her spoils, smiling. But it wasn't over yet. Not long after she walked, she received a call from her agent. The agent spoke in an urgent tone, saying that the filming of the advertisement had not yet ended and asked her to come back quickly. Back at the shooting site, I heard that the first thing she did was to place the delicacies on the table in the lounge. The whole room was instantly filled with the aroma of fried beef noodles, and the assistant was stunned. Miss me, did you really go there? The assistant looked incredulous and held up her phone to show her the photo of the long line in front of Boss Sue's stall. How did you buy this? You can't even get it if you line up now. Yongmi just smiled without explaining anything, then opened the box, picked up a piece of fried beef noodles with chopsticks, and stuffed it directly into her mouth. Oh my God! It's so delicious. Yang Mi's eyes lit up instantly. She couldn't stop eating it all. She ate with a few chopsticks in a row, enjoying it so much. The assistant and the agent were stunned. After holding back for a few seconds, the agent finally couldn't help but say, "Miss Me, you have to pay attention to your figure. This is high in oil. What are you afraid of?" Yang Mi waved her hand, still holding a mouthful of beef noodles, and said vaguely, "As long as it tastes good, I can just eat less tomorrow." However, before she could finish the rest of the fried beef noodles, her agent suddenly snatched the box away and said confidently, "Sister Me, I'm your agent and assistant, and I have the responsibility to manage your figure." Then he changed the subject and said, "I'll eat the rest so it won't be wasted." Chapter 119. While drinking the mung bean shaved ice, Yami couldn't help but sigh that this delicacy was too much. Every bite was icy and refreshing. The sweetness was just right, and the smoothness of the shaved ice was perfect to the extreme, which was impeccable. Who exactly is this boss Sue? Yangmi muttered to herself, her eyes drifting away. To be honest, she has never lacked delicious food in her life, not to mention the Michelin restaurants and high-end banquets she has been to. But these so-called top-notch dishes have failed to bring her the happiness she is now. Boss Sue's food is not only delicious, but also has a special warmth, like a long-lost comfort, which goes straight to the heart and makes people feel sweet from the tip of the tongue to the heart. Oh my God, it's a crime for a man like this to cook. Yangmi smiled and recalled the rumor that her assistant had told her before. This boss Sue was divorced and a single father. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but become more curious. A divorced man with a child can still live such an enjoyable life, and can also stand out in a seemingly ordinary business like selling things on the street and attract so many fans. How much persistence and ability does it take to do this? Yangmi shook her head and laughed at herself. No. Why are you thinking so much? I just came here to have a meal. Why are you thinking about gossip? She continued to sip the mung bean smoothie, her eyes becoming more gentle. Boss Sue, I wonder if you have ever cooked for your girlfriend? Yangmi muttered subconsciously, and then she was amused by herself. She shook her head and threw away the thought just now. Forget it, a man like Boss Sue probably won't lack people chasing him. At this moment, the assistant's phone suddenly rang. Hey, Sister Me, this is not possible. The assistant's voice was raised in anxiety. There are so many people in front of Boss Sue's stall in Tainyokyo Square. I can't squeeze in at all. Even if I queue up, it will take more than an hour now. I calculated that the crystal cake and chicken tofu pudding are probably sold out. Hearing the assistant's complaints, Yangmi couldn't help biting the straw and almost broke it. She wanted to try a few more. How come they were sold out? Okay, don't worry. Yangmi sighed. Come back first. I still ate a little. I'll figure out the rest later. After hanging up the phone, her eyes returned to the green bean smoothie cup in her hand, and she finally put down the straw after taking a big sip. She looked up at the ceiling, and suddenly a little unwillingness arose in her heart. Why don't I find an opportunity someday to go and see Boss Sue in person? She murmured. Then she put on a sly smile and said, I just don't believe that someone who is so handsome and cooks so well will stay single for too long. Thinking of this, Yangmi's mouth corners slightly raised, and she continued to enjoy the last few mouthfuls of mung bean shaved ice. She secretly made up her mind. Next time she has the chance, she must meet this mysterious food boss Su Yang in person.